Holding Safe Spaces. My name is Carla. I'm here with two special guests. We have Christopher Grimes and we have Mo Reed. We're going to be talking about therapy today, and we're talking about it from different perspectives. I'm pro therapy, Chris is pro therapy, and Mo is in between. He's kind of teetering on which way to go. So with that, Chris, do you want to start it off by maybe talking about the reason why you go to therapy?
I could do that. That's not no problem. Um, I started going to therapy. The first time I went to therapy was in back in I think 20. I want to say 2014, 2015, somewhere in there. And I went because I just broke up with my fiance, and I was trying to really work through that space, and I knew I needed some help because I was having a difficult time navigating that kind of space by myself. It was much different than just breaking up with a girlfriend. So I went. My therapist, I just took whoever they gave me, what happened to be a younger white woman, and it helped a little bit, but I wasn't getting the kind of results I wanted from therapy, to be honest, because I didn't feel comfortable being that vulnerable with that person, right? And that's kind of go on the other spectrum when people say they don't want to go to therapy because they don't feel comfortable talking to that person. But I don't think the kind of rapport that was necessary was in place for me to kind of make therapy work. So then fast forward, I go to therapy now, right? I'm pro-choice with therapy personally because for me it's a place where I can go talk about my stuff, and I was intentional about getting a black woman for a therapist this time, and I was intentional about getting an older black woman. And I was of that mind because I would figure this person would probably likely be a Christian, which this is my assumptions. My assumptions were right for my therapist, and from my past, every time my life has taken a turn for the better, and healing has been a part of that narrative every step of the way, there's always been a black woman in that conversation with me as I was getting back to a better place in my life. So I just went and got a professional because my mama is probably not in a position to help me like that now. My grandmother's not in a position to help me like now. So I went and saw a professional. I went and got a woman that I know is 65, 60 years old or better, or at least 60 years old as a therapist. And I was intentional about that. So I'm really for it because I see it as a space where I can go tell my business to a perfect stranger who can't do nothing to me. They don't live in the same community as me. We don't frequent at the same places, right? So they're not in my friend group to be telling my friends my business to gossip about me. So it's a safe space for me
Mm.
in that regard.
So, Mo, you currently don't go to therapy. And why do you teeter, or have you even considered maybe going to therapy? Okay, so Mo dropped off. Hopefully, he comes right back so we can ask him the question.
Mo.
Okay. For me, I've been going for about off and on for the past 11 years since 2013, and so I need to go figure out how to deal with my emotions. Um, and so I ended up taking a break for about a year, and during that break, I ended up getting into a serious relationship, and then it dissipated, and then that made me say, "Hey, I need to go back to therapy to work on my emotions with dealing with that relationship and how it ended and how I handled myself during that relationship." Um, for me, Chris, you said that you prefer woman of an older age. I know you said before you had a white woman, but did you prefer someone of color?
I preferred an older black woman um, because, like, one of the things that I said earlier was that oftentimes when I had healing take place in my life has been my grandmother participated in that in many ways. You know what I'm saying? And the elders get to a place where they can't continue to give you that kind of wisdom that they once upon a time gave you. So I went and looked for another elder for my community. And I saw this person I looked at this person and just kind of looked and said, okay, I think she might be it. All I need to know is she a Christian, right? She a Christian. She's going to advise me, honestly. And that's what I really wanted, was that kind of dialogue to take place between me and her. So for me, and she going to understand what I'm going through just being a black man, you know what I'm saying, in America. And I was going through some pretty rough stuff in that particular season of my life. And she helped me get to a place where it kind of, it wasn't easy to get over. You know what I'm saying? And I know that's something that, Mo had talked about, people get over some things, but some things in life, I'll tell somebody to keep living. Some things you experience in this life, you just can't get over. It ain't something you can just move past, because when you end up in environments where you're experiencing things you never experienced before. When you go from living in metropolitan area, you find yourself in a predominantly white rural setting working. That's not the same. How people treat you, how people talk to you is completely different. But you can't go run away, and you can't say, I'm just going to bounce because this is where you work, this is where you live. So you definitely need some help processing things like that. And that's one of the things that drove me back to therapy, right? And I was like, I'm going to get an older black woman who's going to understand the things I'm going through, because we're not dealing with, things in an urban context. You're dealing with it in a rural context. That's completely different, right? And so for me, I need to talk to somebody that was older, who probably got some roots in the South, and gonna be able to help me navigate something that I'm not gonna be able to navigate by myself.
So let me ask you, you being a man, and I'm wondering why you didn't choose a man. I would think that most men or most people would choose people of their same sex.
Well, the reason why I would not, because you gotta remember what I said earlier. When healing has taken place in my life, it has been a black woman involved in that process. And if I'm acknowledging that there's something not well, I'm going to the gender that is the most nurturing, but also can be the most forward with you. Yeah, you do need to be loved on, I get it. But we also can't lose sight of the prize. I know as a man, I didn't get nurturing from men coming up. So when I'm feeling as if I'm broken, I didn't run to my father, I ran to my mother. So it's almost like a childlike behavior in the sense that I need help, that I know if I can ask this person for help. Now, there are men in my life that I definitely went to in that season, but I didn't want a man to be my therapist, because now we're talking about being transparent and vulnerable. And we both know, and Mo knows this, he's a young man, and Carla, you know about this, is you don't feel comfortable being vulnerable with everybody. So I felt more comfortable being vulnerable with a woman than I did a man. Right. And typically it's not normal, right? In some contexts, for men to be vulnerable with one another. You'll find that a man got perhaps maybe a female best friend that knows more about him than his homeboys do. Especially if this woman is somebody he feel like he can tell this stuff to, even if it's a non-sexual relationship. Because you don't want your boys to think you weak, so you wouldn't tell your boys you got no weakness. That's not what men do with men. Men don't talk about vulnerabilities with one another. It takes a different level of maturity to operate like that. So just from the perspective of masculinity that's perceived in our cultural context, it made all the sense in the world to go get a woman.
Okay. But do you think at some point that for to be able to, at some point, do you think men need to get, or how can they possibly become vulnerable around each other? Because we
Well, I
talked about
have.
that. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll say this, just to answer that one question. I have men I'm vulnerable with.
Mm-hmm.
I have men, but there are men that have walked with me. There is a relationship that needs to take place between me and where you even begin to even feel it's okay. to let your guard down and let another man see your wounds, your scars. That's not easy for men to do, especially if I know that I'm weak. Here you go. It's like competing in sports. Mo can relate to this. If you go in a hoop and you know this dude can't dribble with his left hand, you're going to make him put that ball in that left hand, right? That's weakness. And when we see weakness, we expose it in some cases. And so you don't want to have a bunch of men knowing where your weaknesses are. You really want nobody to know. But if you feel as if an older person, somebody that's trusted, probably seasoned, is going to be able to hold your stuff, you'll definitely share your brokenness with somebody that you believe is going to be able to handle hearing about what's going on with you for real. Because everybody can't handle your stuff.
Mm. So is that basically how you feel about picking someone of color? And was that, of course, that seems to be important to you, right? Is it because at this point it's not, it's a level of vulnerability um, with the woman, but also a form of, is it a form of being able to relate as a black person? Is that why you chose a woman of color?
Absolutely. Right? Without getting too far into it, I was experiencing racism at work. And see, it's one thing to read about it in a textbook. It's one thing to see it on TV and be like, dang, I can't believe that's still happening in the world. It's something different when you are experiencing it firsthand for yourself. So absolutely, it made sense for me as a black man to go get an older black woman who just might, who is not that far removed from racism herself, who probably got Southern roots.
See,
Because
I haven't.
how I look, here you go. Let me say this.
Okay.
How I look, experiencing some racism from white people, and then going to get me a white therapist when I'm pissed already. Part of my English, right? That I'm experiencing racism from a white person. I'm definitely not about to be go vulnerable with this person. I'm gonna be ready almost to cuss them out because of what somebody on the other side of town did. I want somebody who like, oh yeah, I know about that. Hold on, this is how we gonna work through this. You can't help me work through something you ain't never had to work through. And I'm talking about that right there ain't your normal kind of thing. That's different. All the way different. So you talking about getting a black woman, older therapist, and you experiencing racism at work, and you know you can't quit your job. You know you can't just walk away. Even Mo was on there like, yeah, I would have went to therapy too on that one, bro. Yeah, because you can't quit. You can't walk away from your job. This your thing's what you do. So yeah, so period.
So,
Pen.
so I have a different
Yeah.
perspective, Chris.
Oh yeah. Oh
See,
yeah.
see, me, I wanted to have someone that wasn't black. And let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. So for one, what I learned is well the reason why I wanted someone that wasn't black was because, let's be honest, black people have dealt with the brunt of a whole bunch of racism, right? And a brunt of a whole bunch of abandonment and things of that nature. What I was afraid of was, well, there was two reasons. One, I didn't want us to connect in that way and you not be somebody that's unbiased, because there's a different, people can be biased towards you as well as opposed to just against you, and I didn't want that. Then another reason was because I wanted a different point of view. Mind you, for me, I've also experienced racism basically in all of my career, being the only black woman engineer a lot in a lot of settings. One being the only black person, let alone also being one of two or three women. So for me, that's why I chose a white person. And let me tell you my experience. The person that I chose, I loved. I mean, she was my therapist for years. It helped me to identify a lot of different things, gave me a lot of different tools, And she actually was the one to introduce, hey, Carla, let's figure out and look into testing you for ADD. I've never even thought about that or thought about that was something I even need to consider. She had already moved on and gave me someone else because she was moving to another location. Um, so I went to the other therapist. She was cool, but also there's a difference between methodologies, as you know, right? So I took a year off, and when I took this year off, I came back during the pandemic, and I said, I'm getting all black doctors. I changed my PCP. I changed everybody. I said, I'm about to get a black therapist and see, I'm nervous about it, but I'm going to do it. Let me tell you what happened in my experience. So the first time, because I tried it twice, you can't, and as you know, you have to wait and you have to find people that meet with you. Everybody's not going to match with you, right? In addition to that, but you also have to give them time, right? Of a couple weeks, a month, and see how you guys can adapt. So the first time, I went with this lady, and mind you, the when I went with this lady, she was really nice, really cool. But then I told her that I ended up running into my ex, who I was having troubles with at that time, running into her ex, current, whoever she with, right? And I was like, I ended up seeing her on something. Her response to me was, "Ooh, you should have said something." I said, "Excuse me?" She talking to me like I'm my homegirl. I said, "No, that's what I shouldn't have done." And then she straightened back up and was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's strike one." After that, I was done with her. So then, now at this point, I've taken another break. I'm in this whole relationship. I'm all engaged and stuff. this Now the relationship is over, and I go to another black therapist. This black therapist, I didn't feel good. You know how Mo was just talking about how you can't trust people you don't know, and you mentioned it as well. For some strange reason, I felt like I couldn't trust her instantly. And then with that, I started telling her my situation with my relationship and how bad it was. She gave me the most outlandish advice, telling me to continue to keep reaching out to my ex. This is the advice she told me, like literally. But you have to remember, Chris, I also have ADD. So you telling somebody that has ADD and is all the way literal to do this. I don't have a gray area. And then after that, all she wanted to talk about on every session was about my relationship, not about my healing. She wanted to get the tea. She wanted to see how my reaching out is going. So after that, I said, oh, heck no. And guess where I tried it myself right back to? Look, I've been with now this lady who looks not like me, who definitely assessed the situation and said if somebody was trained and they know you have ADD, they need to understand that your program completely different, and it's not just based off of your focus or lack of focus. So she has helped me tremendously in this healing process, as opposed to my two examples and experiences I've had with people that look like me. So that's why I'm like, nope, I'm straight. And I know that was a long, detailed explanation, but I'm straight. I'm straight. I think that also comes down to like doctors, right? Doctors, people think of it as a business, or teachers, for example. Some just there for a paycheck. but it's also a lot of them that are there for what their passion is, and that's to help people. And that's the way I look at therapy. That's why I won't give up on it. Because like right now, I'm so blessed to have had the experiences that I had and found the person that I have now. I need somebody that's more active and more going to give me tools as opposed to just listen. So that's the type of therapist I need. But the experiences I had with people that look like me turned me completely off, and it made me feel all the way unsafe. And encouraged me to the things that got me. Boy, you don't even know where it got me.
And the one thing I'll say to that is, and this is why I said what I said about my picking of my therapist. I was intentional about getting a older black woman for sure, because you young, you just getting started out. This your first career. You want to help people. I'm gonna believe you got some profound insight, even at 25 or 26 or 27. But if you only in the business of getting a paycheck off of the insurance company and not really getting me going to where I really need to be going, then I'm not mad at you for that. But I can speak for my therapist. Like, my therapist will get over an issue and then we stop talking. Cause she like, he good. When he need me again, he'll call me back. Right. He'll let me know when he's ready to set up some more, sessions. Um, I've always had this very good relationship with older people. So I just know you've been on the planet longer than me. You done seen some things I haven't seen. So that's why I go to them. And that probably come from my background in the church, growing up going to church. Because you young I hate to say this, is a bunch of mature people at the church, right? So I would look for somebody that's a therapist that's maturing, right? You probably in your 60s. You probably my therapist probably about 63 or somewhere in there. Good. You got some wisdom for me, right? You done seen some things. You've been married for some years. You got a child of your own. You done worked in corporate America. Your husband worked in corporate America. So you know what it is. You go to church. We having an exchange. I need to know some stuff about you. Where you from? You a believer? Like, I'm asking questions. 'Cause I need to know that you pray. Because if my life messed up, I hope you take my name before the throne of grace too sometimes. You know what I'm saying? So it just, for me, I know our people, especially the generation before us, are very spiritual and have connection to God. I need that in my life too. I want people around me that love the Lord, right? That I ain't talking about being super churchy, but I'm just saying I need that, right? And so I went for somebody who will hook me up. And I'm willing to bet that both of those therapists that you had were probably under 40.
Nope. One, no, no. The one that gave me the direction, the to keep pushing, the reaching out, she was around my age. Not that one I give, but the one that was telling me to reach out to the ex's ex, and she was in her mid 50s, late mid to late 50s. So absolutely not. So that's the thing. Not at all. So
That
so
was my
what
prejudice showing. Okay.
I have to agree right there, Chris. But look, why are we talking about religion? Because I know, what what you do, and your relationship to God, which is awesome, by the way. I have had people tell me I don't need therapists because God is my therapist. I don't need to rely on anybody because I have Him. And I totally get it because I love God too. But I remember my pastor, late pastor Alexander, used to tell me, and faith without works is dead. And God uses people to be able to reach out to you. So I want to know you both of your thoughts on that.
You want me just to expound upon what you just said? You answered it,
But
right? God uses people. I mean, I think we often forget that God has called us all into creation for a purpose, for God's glory, period. And each of us have different and unique giftings. And it sounds to me, Carl, like two of your therapists probably were not called to be therapists, because you're talking about people who are called to the work of people moving towards healthier mental wellness, right? We would call that almost like participating in someone's journey towards their wholeness or healing, right? So you start talking about, well, I don't need no therapist. Well, if you don't feel like nothing's broke and you feel like you're gonna go talk to God and deal with God on it, I mean, that's your business, your preference. But my question to someone who would say, I don't need nobody but God, as if God is not calling people to all kinds of works. That same person that said that, they not trusting God to heal their body, they go to the doctor. They not trusting God to fix their teeth, they go to the dentist, right? They not trusting God to fix their car, they go to a mechanic. I don't understand. Really, I ain't trying to bust nobody down, but I'm just saying, right? God has called us for unique gifts and talents to share those gifts with one another for our betterment. So for that person, if that's your preference, that's your preference. But let me get to the question. The question I would ask them is, how do you know when it's not you talking to yourself, God not talking to you, or the adversary? How do you decipher those different voices that you deal with on a regular basis, right? It ain't just when you want to deal with them. Those are voices that will pop up regardless of what you have going on, right? So that would be my question to someone in that lane with that. But God has called us to a multitude of tasks that provide, wellness for the benefit of humanity. And to think that I'm not going to talk to somebody about my trauma so that I can get it off my chest so I'm not holding it in. That's their business. If you feel as if God is all you need for that, then that's your business. I wouldn't tell you not to talk to God, but just know that if you can't handle it on your own, there are people that God has set apart for the work of walking with you on that journey.
But just know too, Mo, that it's also your work that you're putting in um, to get where you are. Because if you weren't saying, "Hey, I need to take care of this. I need to take care of this. I'm about to have a family." You cut hair, you demo homes, you do all of these types of things. If you were sitting around just twiddling your thumbs, then you might not be where you are, even with God. And um, because and with your mom's prayers, because your mom is praying for you regardless, right? God is there regardless, but also God doesn't necessarily support laziness. So that's the thing. You're not lazy, Mo. So what makes it evil? I want to say that based off of what you're saying, trauma is a thing, but trauma can come in all forms. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be like abusive in a way. It can come in all forms where something might have scarred you, and it could have been just an experience that might have not been a big deal to somebody else, but it was a big deal to you. And I'm going to tell you that's personally what I deal with a lot. And then, but I can tell you this, you know what therapy did for me? Because again, it wasn't to therapy I learned about ADD. Therapy is the reason why I graduated from college. Therapy is the reason why I um I was able to do what I did to my house and organization and prioritizing. So it's all about what you can also get out of it and get the right therapist for you. I can't take somebody that's going to sit there and just listen to my woes and not respond. Those are types of therapists out there. I need somebody that's going to say, okay, we understand you're having these issues. Let's get to the root of the problem. And now let's give you some tools to figure it out. Like right now. And I know it's like, oh, okay, well, I started going to therapy again because I was literally going through a heartbreak. Literally going through a heartbreak. And it's a complete difference from being married and just having a boyfriend girlfriend. It's completely different. It's a whole different thing. So going through something of the sort, like Chris said, like him going to a therapist when he ended his engagement. That's something. That's a big deal. Marriage is a big deal. So it's not easy something that you can brush off. So since I've been going, it has opened my eyes to a lot of self-identification and understanding and learning myself that I didn't know before. So I'm so grateful for it. But I can't understand when it's people who say, nope, I'm just going to move on. It's just, let me do that. If something doesn't scar you, you just need to ask yourself and assess your situation and say, hey, am I bleeding on somebody? Even though I moved on, am I bleeding on somebody? Am I taking advantage of somebody? Am I doing these things because even though you move on because it's easy to do because that's how you've been programmed to do, that doesn't necessarily mean that you might not have things that you necessarily need to work on. I'm not saying you per se, Mo, but I'm saying for anybody that says, nope, I was taught to just move on. This is a lot of people that deal with a lot of trauma and they have been taught to get over it, and the way to get over it is just to move on, but they don't realize they're hurting other people in the process.
Yeah, that's one of the things that definitely happened for me in going to therapy, because when I started processing my childhood, right? So processing my childhood and my adult years, you don't even know how much trauma you got within you until you trying to get to this place where you want to be a better version of yourself. Not that you are acquiring more things, but you just want to be a healthier version of yourself. And you realize you got all this stuff waiting for you back there because you just been moving on. Because more like you, I played football in high school and in college, and you taught the next play, right? You taught the next play. I didn't coach high school basketball. It's the next play, right? You don't have time to dwell on that. You can't fix it. It is what it is, right? And you program that way. But what I can say, just being a man over 40, is that you keep moving to the next play. One day it's gonna catch up with you. Sometimes you got to turn, look back, process, grab the lessons, grab whatever you're supposed to grab from it. And really, the thing that most of us don't really deal with a lot, and I'm telling on myself a little bit, but hopefully this will help both you and whomever listen to this podcast. We don't deal well in forgiveness, and so that's one of the things that creates a lot of trauma for us, in our community. It creates a lot of trauma in ourselves because forgiveness is more for us than it is for the person that we're forgiving. And let's go back to something that Mo said, is so that you don't keep reliving the same thing over and over and over again. And when you are in that cycle, it's hard to forgive because you gotta make peace with who this person is. You almost gotta make peace with, like, why this person don't deserve forgiveness right now because they hurt me and I can't believe they will hurt me. For me personally, what I did was I said, this person don't even know what they did probably really did hurt me. They don't know where I'm wounded at. They don't know where I'm bleeding on somebody at, because I'm ignoring the bleeding to keep moving forward. Because in one part of us as men playing sports, you're taught to be a wounded warrior and to keep moving forward. So when you start learning that you really bleeding on people, and you start making a decision, do I really want to deal with forgiveness? Because now I gotta, as Mo would say, let it go. It's not always easy to let it go, even though it might be good for you. But that's all you know. And sometimes we find more comfort in the prisons of our own making than we do with being set free. I know, Carla, we were talking about this. We was hanging out with Cuz on Sunday, and I said one of the things was, since I've been living in the house I'm living in now, I had this nice little beautiful encounter with Jesus, right? And I had a lot of unforgiveness in me. You know what I'm saying? A lot of it, like things I had done, things I had, things I seen, the whole nine. And I watched the Lord take me to this space where I was in a prison, but all the doors were open. And he says, he who the Son sets free is free indeed. And then I watched him walk out of the prison and then kind of lean back in and say, are you coming? In so many words, he was saying, I forgive you for everything that you've ever done, everything you ever do, but I need you to learn how to forgive yourself. When you learn how to forgive yourself, you can forgive everybody else. But what I tell young people is, when you learn to forgive your parents for being so imperfect, you'll find the courage to forgive yourself. Because you came from imperfect people, so there's no way you about to get it right all the time. So if you can forgive your mom and your dad for whatever they have been in this life to you, you'll find courage to forgive yourself. And you can learn how to forgive others. And you figure out how to do that. That's that peace Mo talking about. That
Yeah.
peace where it's like, I get it, man. I know, I understand, man. Some of us really are walking around in the walking dead. We bleeding on people. I know you don't really mean nothing by it, you ignorant. And the key word in ignorant is ignore. So you're
Mm-hmm.
ignoring something that's going wrong in you and you taking it out on me, but I know I'm not the source nor the cause of the pain that you're experiencing. And this is one of the things that Jesus does from the cross. He says, Father, forgive them for they know not what they do. They don't know they bleeding all over everybody. They don't know they wounded. They don't know they sick. So Lord, have mercy on them. I'm going to forgive them because I know they don't know no better. And I dare not dwell on this and go back to prison with the doors wide open.
Exactly. And the thing about it is also, I'm not a therapist or anything, but sometimes when you let go and not deal with what you're dealing with, you have these things. It's three conditions that you deal with a lot. It's either flight, fight, or freeze. And you learn this in therapy. Either something scares you and you're triggered and then you want to run away, or you want to fight in anger, or whatever way it comes out, or you just ignore it and sweep it underneath the rug. But either one of those three options, you're not taking care of or addressing the issue. And that's the biggest thing for me for therapy, because I'm at the place that Chris is talking about. I realize how hard I am on myself. I have not forgiven myself, especially for my most recent action that I have. But that's something that therapy is helping me work through. Because hey, I'm not saying I was right, because I was wrong, but also, hey, let's figure out what triggered you to get you where you were in that point of anger. Without my therapist, I wouldn't have thought about that. Or having good friends who are are mature enough and emotionally intelligent enough to say, hey, let's sit down and look and let's pull the layers back and get to why this angered you and you reacted the way that you did. So that's what I can say about it as well. The last point that I want to talk about is the fear of judgment. I feel like, and I wonder to a lot of people that don't go to therapy, are they afraid of judgment from that person they're sitting across from talking to? Or are they afraid of judgment from God? Or are they afraid of judgment from themselves? Because at the end of the day, I look at it like no matter where you go, God gonna always see everything you do. So I I don't know, but I wonder if a fear of judgment plays a part.
I don't think that I wouldn't say that it's a fear of judgment. I don't think that is what keeps many people from going to therapy, right? I know Mo gonna have his take as well, right? Um, I think it's more of the fear of being naked, right? You going to therapy to be vulnerable. You going to therapy to be vulnerable. You trying to get something resolved. You trying to get to the root of an issue, or I say the genesis of it all. You like trying to get to the beginning. How did we get here? I might be in trouble right here, but I need to take some steps back to figure out where it started. Because if I deal with cutting the leaves and I don't uproot the tree, I'm gonna be in trouble because it's gonna come right back again, right? So I think in our context, especially for Black folks, we got so much trauma in our community. People like I don't want to connect with people in their trauma, but it's just so much trauma in our community. We not that far removed from slavery, but we 400 years. That ain't that long ago, right? We literally probably about 4 generations from it. You know what I'm saying? Like we ain't that far removed from slavery, right? Just us, right? About 4 or 5 generations. And so you keep that in mind. We're not even accustomed to being vulnerable, right? I said I would go find me a Black woman, an older one to be vulnerable with. That I'm not. It took me years to get to the place where when I'm talking to men that are brothers to me in life, and even my biological brother, I tell these men I love them. That's not stuff you typically hear about Black men saying other Black men, like I love this Black man, right? Because I understand that how can I say I love how can I walk with this person and they never hear it? Bro, I love you. You know what I'm saying? It is nothing erotic about any of this love. It's philios. It's a brotherly love. Like, I got love for you, bro. Like, I got you. You know what I'm saying? This is my man. It's my partner. That kind of vulnerability is not normative in our cultural context. That is not normative. So you talking about telling somebody about the brokenness that exists in my humanity? Oh no. I'm gonna go share that with who? So I can see how somebody would be more like, I'm not about to let you know that about me. It ain't because of the judgment. I just don't want you to know that about me. Because it's things about all of us that we don't want nobody to know about except ourselves and God. And a lot of us are so private in that regard with the innermost chambers of our heart. Like the whoever the person is or whoever the people are that say, well, I don't go to therapy because I just talk to God, because those people have trust issues with people. Because it takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable. That's not something that's easily done. And you asking somebody who's probably walking around wounded, praying and talking to God for healing, and they're telling, like, I ain't going to therapy. I'm just gonna keep coming to you. And it very well could be the Spirit of God is trying to lead them to therapy. And they like, no, I ain't going to do that. I'm gonna keep talking to you. So you just never know how this thing works out. But for me, I think that people that don't want to go to therapy, I think it's more so about, I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want anybody to know about that kind of weakness that is a part of my person.
I'm gonna say it's interesting to me, Chris, about the vulnerability part, because you are so right. It takes you to be able to be all the way vulnerable and open. Because I realize that when I trust you enough and I be vulnerable and you violate that, it's an anger out of control. And that's the only time you'll ever see anger from me, is if I've given you all of me and I felt like you violated it. Which then, that's why I need to be in therapy, to say, hey, I'm gonna be vulnerable with you. Not saying I'm gonna not be vulnerable with people that come into my life. I'm gonna be more selective about it. But I realize the vulnerability I need to have with my therapist in order to even deal with the anger that I have when I'm vulnerable with people outside of therapy. So that's a good point, and that's something I just literally just thought about. That's so true about how important vulnerability is when it comes to therapy.
I mean, it's just one of the things you learn about as you dealing with our human condition, right? And you just understand that nobody don't want to be vulnerable. It don't matter if you're in an African American context, white context, because it's exposure. And it's not the kind of exposure you want, because you give people that kind of information, you never know what they're gonna do with that. And we hold certain things about us as sacred. And when you share that with somebody and they weaponize it or whatever, man, that it will cause you to be like, I want to do something to you. I can't believe it's the betrayal, right? And I think one of the things that I'm hearing you say about therapy is that therapy has and is teaching you how to um, deal with betrayal in a healthy way, right? Because one of the things we understand about people is Mo just let it go, but betrayal is, man, that stuff is rough, because that stuff we take it as disrespect. And so
And
when
it
we start dealing with that stuff in our context, we're talking about romantic, intimate relationships. I'm being very vulnerable with you. I'm very exposed with you. And why are you over here mistreating me like that? You know what I'm saying? Why would you do that? And that's the kind of stuff that cause you to jump off the cliff with people. But I know your therapist is giving you tools on how to move. And
oh
when
yeah,
when betrayal comes, because it's gonna come again. And that's the thing that it's a part of being alive. It's not ever gonna stop.
I think it's never going to stop, but also it is getting me to learning and identifying the importance of discernment, um, with people, and also using my intuition to help guide me, and also using him to help guide me as well. But absolutely, I agree that um, that definitely my therapist is really helping me, but it's also helping me to understand. Therapy is also helping me to understand those triggers behind why I'm so angry when I feel betrayed or I feel hurt when I've been 100% vulnerable with someone. So that's a thing for me right now. But I want to say that I appreciate this discussion with you both. And I it means a lot to me because therapy means a lot to me, especially in this moment and in this phase that I'm in life. Um, so I just want to say thank you, Chris, and I want to say thank you, Mo. Mo, I appreciate you being as young as you are, even though you might think you're an old man now, with being open to the discussion and expressing your feelings about it and your thoughts. Because even a lot of guys, especially young guys, don't want to do that. So I just want to say thank you to both. Do either of you have anything to say or want to say?
Oh man, Carla, man. Thanks for the invite. You know what I'm saying? On Sunday we was kicking. I was coming to get me a dinner. Thanks for hanging around a little while so I can
Yeah,
get to see my
absolutely.
people. You know what I'm saying? So I was coming to get my chicken dinner. Uh, Cuz was like, did you like your food? I was like, man, Cuz I tore that food up, man. What you talking about? I should have got an extra size. Some red beans and rice was busting. I guess the one thing I know you recording and stuff like that. I guess I'll just leave a couple of things just for some sound bites for some folks. Um, One of the things that gets us in trouble in our community big time is that we don't do enough personal development. Um, we know what the baby talking about, little baby, we know what everybody's talking about. But we don't work on ourselves enough. One of the things that has helped me so much, even in therapy and I'm a pastor, so I do a lot of counseling as well, is I just know that most people don't forgive themselves. And because they struggle to forgive themselves, it's difficult to forgive others. And I know a lot of people don't have working definitions about what it really means to love themselves. And therapy ain't nothing but self care at the end of the day. It's you being intentional about caring for yourself and going and finding the right person for you to sit and have those kind of conversations that you wouldn't have with anybody else. That's a part of that getting naked so that you can get to where you really want to be, which is whole. And I think that's one of the most profound things Jesus asks anybody in scripture is, do you want to be made well? And if you ask somebody that today, they will tell you yes. And then the next thing that man says to him is, but I have no man. So the next thing he goes to is an excuse. And the one thing that I can say about therapy, I can say it about church, anything that is designed to help you take that next step. God created us to be in community. He didn't create us to live on an island. And so whether you decide to go to therapy or you got a friend group you can share your innermost thoughts with, or a barber, because I go to the barber and talk to my barber and kick it with him, and they be like, man, what you going to the barber shop for? I said, man, my beard got to get lined up, you dig? I'm from Detroit, baby. This thing got to be clean, you dig? You know what I'm saying? I know Mo would appreciate that. um, but you find people in this life to talk to. Those are people God sent your way. You might not want to go to formal therapy, anybody listening to this, man, but do the work. Nothing like reading a good book, and I'll just throw a few of them out there. The Four Agreements is a really good book. The Mastery of Love, The Fifth Agreement. I think The Knowledge of Self. These are all good books to read, man, to kind of help you start working on putting yourself in a good position. Another really good one is by Joshua Metcalf called Chop Wood and Carry Water and Pound a Stone. If you want to figure out how to be healthier, you got to put new information in your head. I mean, at the end of the day. And if you put new information there, you will have healthier thoughts. And my hope for anybody that takes a look at this podcast, I hope that you have the courage to become a better you and just do the work. And you're going to get there one step at a time.
Awesome. And I do want to say one last thing. When you go to therapy, don't go just one session and think you think you good. Don't go just one session and think, nah, they don't know nothing. They already know about me. It take more than 1 and 2 and 3 sessions for you to even get close and get warm to the experience. So that's all I have to say. But I want to say thank you again, and I appreciate it. I love the both of you. So have a good night.